What's the funniest thing you've done while trying to impress your crush? Attempting a beer can crush gone wrong. In a moment of sheer confidence, I decided to pull off a party trick I thought would both impress and amuse my crush. After seeing someone do it online, I figured it would be easy to crush a beer can with my boob. No big deal, right? Well, turns out it's a lot harder than it looks. As I positioned the can and braced for impact, the metal tab somehow caught onto my shirt, and as I pressed down with all my might, the sharp edge sliced my skin. Blood trickled down, and I stood there in shock while my crush stared, wide-eyed, unsure whether to laugh or help. I ended up making an emergency trip to the bathroom with a handful of napkins. Needless to say, the impression I left wasn't quite what I had in mind. Learning about planets and sneakers, I spent *weeks* preparing to talk to my crush. He was really into space and sneakers, which seemed like two completely unrelated topics, but I was determined to dive deep into both. I read books about the solar system, learned the names of moons, and even memorized facts about black holes. On the sneaker side, I studied up on the history of Nike, learned about their most famous models, and could even explain why the Air Jordan 1 is still a cultural icon. When we finally sat down for lunch, I was bursting with information. Every time he mentioned something, I casually dropped knowledge about galaxies or sneaker production. The best part? He was so impressed, he didn't realize I'd barely spoken to anyone else for weeks just to prepare for that conversation. But hey, it worked! We're still together! What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done to impress someone? Whether it's a failed attempt at showing off or an awkward moment that still haunts you, we all have those stories. Share your most cringeworthy moments in the comments, and let's see who can relate. Upvote the ones that make you cringe the most. Setting ringtone to her favorite song. For weeks, I had noticed that my crush would hum the same tune in class. It was her favorite song, and I thought it would be a clever way to grab her attention. I changed my ringtone to that exact song and strategically asked my friend to call me right when I'd be walking past her at school. Everything was perfectly timed. As I strolled by, my phone rang, and the song blasted from my pocket. She immediately noticed, her eyes lighting up with recognition. But just as I turned to give her a confident smile, I tripped over my untied shoelace and went tumbling to the ground. The phone flew out of my hand, the song kept playing, and I could only laugh at how ridiculous I must have looked. Still, it broke the ice. We ended up laughing about it, and I got to talk to her after all. Eating Altoids and getting a nosebleed. I wanted to smell minty fresh whenever I was around my crush. So one day, I thought it'd be a good idea to eat a whole container of Altoids before seeing her. I didn't realize just how strong those mints were, though. As I popped mint after mint, the cool sensation turned into an intense burn. My nose started to tingle, but I powered through, thinking it was all worth it. However, by the time I walked up to her, I felt a sudden warm trickle from my nose. I had given myself a nosebleed from the overwhelming minty power. My crush was understandably confused as I ran to the bathroom with blood streaming down my face. To this day, I'm not sure if she thought I was a nosebleed-prone weirdo, but at least I'll always be remembered as the guy who tried too hard to smell nice. Attempting a backflip off a diving board. I was at the local pool one summer, and my crush happened to be there with her friends. Naturally, I felt like it was my moment to shine. I had always wanted to try doing a backflip off the diving board, and what better time than now? I psyched myself up, climbed to the end of the board, and jumped, ready to spin in midair and land gracefully in the water. What actually happened was quite different. Halfway through the flip, I lost all sense of orientation and smacked face first into the water in what had to be the loudest belly flop of the century. The pain radiated through my stomach and chest, and as I surfaced, gasping for breath, my crush and her friends were in hysterics. I'd hoped to leave a lasting impression, and I guess in a way, I did. For the rest of the summer, I was known as the guy who nearly knocked himself out trying to impress a girl, breaking glasses to show flexibility. I don't even know why I thought this was a good idea, but I was sitting on the school bus with my crush one day, and I wanted to show off how tough my new glasses were. They were supposedly flexible, so I started bending the frames to prove how cool and indestructible they were. I could tell she was kind of impressed, so I kept pushing my luck, bending them further and further until, snap. The frames broke clean in half. I sat there, holding the two pieces of what were once my glasses, mortified as my crush tried to stifle a laugh. When I got home, my mom was furious. Not only did I have to get new glasses, but I also learned that just because something is advertised as flexible doesn't mean it's *unbreakable*. Joining a band conversation casually. One time, I saw my crush talking with some friends about a band I had never heard of. I had no idea who they were, but I really wanted to jump into the conversation. So, without hesitation, I walked up and casually dropped a comment about how much I loved their early stuff. They all nodded, and I thought I had successfully blended in. But then, one of them asked me, "What's your favorite album?" My heart sank. I didn't even know the name of the band, let alone their albums. I fumbled for a moment before blurting out, "Oh, you know, their *1*." They all gave me puzzled looks, and it was clear I had no idea what I was talking about. I awkwardly laughed it off and excused myself. I've never done so much Googling in my life as I did after that, learning everything I could about the band, just in case it ever came up again. Taking a slap for her. This one's a bit wild, but in high school, there was this bully who was always picking on my crush. I couldn't stand to see her upset, so one day I stepped in and confronted him. He didn't appreciate my interference, and before I knew it, I was staring down the barrel of a slap to the face. I figured, what's the worst that could happen? And braced myself. When the slap landed, it echoed down the hallway, and everyone turned to stare. My face burned, but I stood my ground. My crush was shocked, but also impressed. The whole thing felt like a scene out of a bad teen drama, but I took the hit like a champ. Later, she came up to me and thanked me, and even though my cheek was red for the rest of the day, it was worth it. Rear-ending, while trying to wave. One of my friends growing up was driving along a side street by our high school when he saw his crush walking to her car. Without thinking, he lowered the window and enthusiastically called her name, waving to get her attention. But, of course, while staring at her, he forgot to keep his eyes on the road. As he was mid-wave, his car slammed into the back of the vehicle in front of him, which just so happened to be driven by an elderly lady. The loud crash was followed by silence and then awkward apologies. He never did get that date. Attempting to grind with soap shoes at school, in an attempt to pull off a trick that would make me look effortlessly cool, I decided to try grinding down a flight of stairs at school with my soap shoes right after lunch. The timing couldn't have been worse. Everyone was lined up, waiting for the bell, and all eyes were on me. I managed to get halfway down before losing my balance and tumbling down the rest of the way, head over heels. It was painful, but what hurt more was hearing the entire crowd erupt in laughter. It wasn't funny to me at the time, but apparently everyone else thought it was the highlight of the day. The burrito surprise gone wrong. Back in high school, I wanted to do something sweet for this girl I liked, so I brought her a burrito from Chipotle while she was at work. To make it extra special, I wrote a cute little note on a piece of paper and tucked it into the burrito, hoping she'd find it and smile. Well, she found it all right, when she choked on it mid-bite. I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed. On top of that, she had to stop working for a few minutes just to recover. Not exactly how I envisioned my grand romantic gesture, but hey, she didn't hold it against me, thankfully. Fixing her car, almost. She had an old car stuck in her garage for months. No battery, the doors wouldn't open, and the title was trapped inside. I wanted to be her knight in shining armor, so I called AAA to help out. The A guy and I tried everything, eventually prying a cracked window open just enough to slip inside and grab the title. I was so proud, walking up to her with the title like I had just saved the day. But when the tow truck arrived, the driver casually pulled off some tape from another window, and the entire window fell down effortlessly. Turns out, we had been trying way too hard on the wrong window. It wasn't exactly my finest hour, but at least we got the car out. Learning her favorite song on piano? After she told me about her favorite song and why it meant so much to her, I decided to learn how to play it on the piano. I spent hours practicing, hoping that one day she would hear me play it. The catch? She lived in the apartment below mine, so every time I thought she was home, I'd start playing, hoping she'd notice. I'm not sure if she ever knew I was playing just for her, but it felt like my own secret way of connecting with her. Baking disaster, mixing up salt and sugar. One time, I tried to impress this guy I liked by baking him cookies. I thought it was the perfect way to show him my sweet side, literally. But in my nervous excitement, I accidentally mixed up the salt and sugar. When he came over, I proudly handed him a cookie, and he took a bite with a smile that quickly turned into a grimace. He tried to be polite, but after a few moments, he started choking and laughing at the same time. It was awful, but we ended up laughing about it together. Now, every time we hang out, we joke about it, and I've sworn off baking. Pizza is much safer. Starting to watch his favorite shows. In an attempt to have more in common with my crush, I started watching all his favorite TV shows and movies. I'd drop little references into conversation and pretend I'd been a fan for ages, even though I had just binge-watched everything the night before. Eventually, he caught on and laughed about it. But hey, at least it gave us something to talk about, right? Being a clown. Let's just say I was an absolute clown around my crush. From making bad jokes to tripping over my own feet, I somehow managed to embarrass myself every time I tried to talk to him. The more I tried, the more ridiculous I became. It's one of those memories I try not to revisit too often. Tried to look cute, but hit the video button. I was trying to take the perfect selfie with my crush, hoping to look cute and casual. But instead of snapping a picture, I accidentally hit the video button. I didn't realize it until I checked later and saw a full minute of me awkwardly posing and adjusting my hair, all while thinking I was capturing that one perfect shot. Needless to say, I never sent it. Attempted to dunk a basketball. In an attempt to show off my athleticism, I decided to try and dunk a basketball in front of my crush. I sprinted towards the hoop, jumped with all my might, and failed miserably. Not only did I miss the hoop by a mile, but I also managed to land awkwardly, falling flat on my back. The crowd's laughter didn't help my bruised ego. Falling asleep mid-conversation. I was hanging out with my crush late one night, trying to stay awake and keep the conversation going. But at some point, I fell asleep. Apparently, I didn't just fall asleep. I kept talking. I had a full conversation with myself, responding to questions she never asked. I have no memory of it, but she thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. The failed hair dye experiment. Years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to help my crush dye her hair. She wasn't exactly on board, but I insisted I knew what I was doing. Spoiler, I didn't. The dye job went terribly wrong, and instead of the soft lavender she wanted, her hair turned into a patchy disaster. Needless to say, I was banned from touching anyone's hair ever again. Gummy worms gone wrong. In high school, there was this guy who had a huge crush on a girl and would always leave little gifts at her locker. Flowers, chocolates, you name it. But one day, he taped a bag of gummy worms to her locker, and for some reason, she completely freaked out. She screamed in the middle of the hallway, humiliating him in front of everyone. The poor guy was so embarrassed he never went near her again. It was painful to watch. Showing off my gaming setup. I thought the perfect way to impress my crush was by showing off my gaming setup. I invited him over, proudly giving him a tour of all my gear, custom lighting, and my high-end PC. I could tell he was a bit overwhelmed by my excitement, but I think it worked. We ended up playing a game together for hours. Slam poetry attempt. In a burst of inspiration, I decided to write a slam poem for my crush. I practiced it endlessly in front of the mirror, making sure my delivery was perfect. When I finally performed it for her, she smiled politely, but I could tell she was trying really hard not to laugh. Apparently, my dramatic pauses and over-the-top hand gestures weren't as impressive as I thought. Disguising as a delivery guy. I really wanted to see my crush, but her family didn't know me at all. So I came up with a genius plan. I dressed up as a delivery guy and went to her apartment. When she answered the door, we had a brief chat, and I revealed my disguise. Just as we were talking, her dad came to the door, and she had to explain that I was just a delivery guy asking for directions. After that, I ran off, but when I got to the street, I looked up, and she waved at me from the balcony. Funny thing, she was my best friend, and she had no idea I had a crush on her at the time. Tried to impress with orange juice, ended up in pain. I thought it would be funny and impressive to pour a glass of orange juice into my mouth while lying on my back, just to show off a bit in front of my crush. But instead of hitting my mouth, I managed to pour it straight into my eyes. It burned like hell, and I was flailing around trying to fix the situation. Despite the disaster, it must have worked because she married me anyway. Attempting to show off my guitar skills, strings snapped. One day, I was trying to serenade my crush with a love song I had learned on the guitar. Everything was going well until the climax of the song, where I strummed a bit too hard, and the strings snapped with a loud asterisk twang asterisk. The noise startled both of us, and I just sat there holding the broken guitar awkwardly. Luckily, she found it endearing and gave me a hug instead of laughing at me. Spilling coffee everywhere. I thought it would be smooth to bring my crush a cup of coffee during a study session. As I confidently walked over to hand it to her, I tripped on a chair leg and spilled the entire cup all over her notes. The look on her face was priceless, but instead of being upset, she laughed and told me she needed a break from studying anyway. Accidentally threw my phone while trying to look cool. I was trying to look cool by flipping my phone in the air while talking to my crush. I had seen it in movies, and it looked effortless. But the moment I tried it, my phone went flying out of my hand and skidded across the ground. We both chased after it, and when we finally caught it, we were both laughing so hard I forgot how embarrassed I was. Tripped over my own feet. During a dance move. At a party, I decided to show off some dance moves to impress my crush. I was doing well for about 5 seconds before I tripped over my own feet and went sprawling across the floor. She rushed over to help me up, and while I was mortified, she said, "Well, at least you're brave enough to try." That comment made the whole thing worth it. Attempted to build a fire, almost set the lawn on fire instead. During a camping trip with friends, I wanted to show my crush that I could build the perfect campfire. I had seen a few survival videos, so I figured I had it under control. But instead of a cozy fire, I somehow managed to set the dry grass nearby ablaze. Thankfully, we put it out quickly, but the look of shock on everyone's face, including hers, is something I'll never forget. We all laughed about it later, but I definitely wasn't allowed near the matches again. Tried to give her a piggyback ride, ended up falling. I thought it would be cute and fun to offer my crush a piggyback ride after school. She hopped onto my back, and everything was going well for the first few steps, until I tripped on the sidewalk and we both tumbled to the ground. I was so embarrassed, but she was laughing so hard that it made the whole situation less painful, physically and emotionally. We both ended up sitting on the ground, laughing like crazy. Baking brownies set off the smoke alarm. I wanted to bake my crush some brownies to show off my cooking skills. I followed the recipe perfectly, or so I thought. As they baked, I noticed smoke billowing out of the oven, and before I knew it, the fire alarm was blaring. I opened the door to a cloud of black smoke and charred brownies. My crush showed up just as I was fanning the alarm with a dish towel. She ended up helping me clean up the mess, and we ordered pizza instead. She still teases me about it. Tried to impress her with my basketball shot, hit her instead. I was at the park with my crush and a group of friends, and I thought I'd show off by taking a long-distance basketball shot. I lined up the shot, focused, and launched the ball, but instead of sinking it in the hoop, the ball went flying straight at her. It hit her right in the shoulder, and I was horrified. She laughed it off, saying she's had worse, but I couldn't stop apologizing. Let's just say I'm not trying out for the NBA anytime soon. Tried to lift weights in front of her, nearly dropped them. We were at the gym, and I thought I'd impress her by lifting more weight than usual. I added a couple of extra plates, confident I could handle it. As I began the lift, I realized almost immediately that I had overestimated my strength. I barely managed to lift the bar before my arm started shaking uncontrollably. I had to drop it down with a loud asterisk clank asterisk before it fell on me. She looked concerned, but all I could do was laugh awkwardly and pretend it wasn't a big deal. Made her a playlist, but sent it to the wrong person. I spent hours crafting the perfect playlist for my crush, filled with songs that reminded me of her. I sent it off, eagerly awaiting her response. A few hours later, I got a message, not from her, but from a random friend I hadn't talked to in months. I had accidentally sent the playlist to him instead of my crush. He thought I had developed some weirdly romantic feelings for him, and it was an awkward conversation to clear up. I finally sent it to the right person, and thankfully, she loved it. Tried to impress with a skateboarding trick, face-planted instead. I saw my crush walking down the street, so I figured it was the perfect moment to show off a new skateboarding trick I'd been practicing. I sped up, attempted to kickflip, and completely wiped out, face-planting into the pavement. My skateboard went flying, and so did my pride. She rushed over, concerned, and helped me up. I was so embarrassed, but she thought it was hilarious and gave me a band-aid for my scraped knee. Tried to speak French to impress her, said something totally wrong. My crush mentioned she was studying French, so I thought I'd impress her by learning a few phrases. I practiced for days, ready to wow her with my newfound language skills. When I finally got the chance, I confidently said, "Je suis un petit poisson," thinking it meant something romantic. Her eyes widened before she burst out laughing. I had just told her, "I am a little fish." Safe to say, my French lesson didn't go as planned. Accidentally spilled water all over her sketchbook. We were sitting together at a cafe, and she was sketching in her notebook while I tried to impress her with stories. As I reached for my drink, I knocked the entire glass of water over, and it spilled right onto her beautiful drawing. I was mortified, but she just laughed and told me it wasn't a big deal. She still finished the drawing, even with the water stains, and said they added character to the piece.